Admiral Kethver stood on the bridge of his massive warship, looking at the small blue planet on the main screen. His forearms were folded behind his back as he studied the data flowing across his command console. The planet was called Earth by its inhabitants, and according to his scouts, it held exactly what the Zephyrian hegemony needed: rare metals, fresh water, and a species primitive enough to be easily controlled. The bridge crew worked quietly around him. They had done this same operation hundreds of times before. Find a primitive world, take what they needed, and add another species to their vast empire. It was simple work that had built the hegemony into the most powerful force the galaxy had ever seen. "What do we know about the locals?" Kethver asked his intelligence officer. The thin alien pulled up a holographic display showing various images of humans. "They call themselves humans, Admiral. Bipedal mammals, no natural weapons to speak of. They have barely left their home planet. Their fastest ships use chemical fuel and take months to travel between their local planets." Kethver watched video feeds of human cities, their primitive vehicles, and their laughably simple aircraft. He had seen thousands of species at this same level of development. They all followed the same pattern when faced with superior technology: shock, fear, then quick surrender. "Their weapons?" he asked. "Chemical explosives and basic nuclear devices, sir. Nothing that could penetrate our shields. Our computers estimate they have the military capability of a species that developed space travel about 50 years ago." Another officer spoke up from the communications station. "Admiral, we are receiving signals from the planet. They appear to have detected our scout ships." Kethver was not surprised. Most primitive species noticed the arrival of superior forces. It usually made the surrender process faster. Put their leader through. The main screen changed to show a human female in what appeared to be a military uniform. She had dark hair pulled back severely and eyes that seemed to study everything they saw. Behind her, other humans moved with purpose through what looked like a command center. "I am Commander Sarah Chun of the United Earth Defense Force," the human said. Her voice was steady and calm. "You have entered Earth space without permission. State your intentions." Kethver almost smiled. The primitive was trying to sound threatening. "I am Admiral Kethver of the Zephyrian hegemony. Your world contains resources that we require. Surrender now, and your species will be given useful work in our empire. Resist and your species will be eliminated. You have one of your local days to decide." The human commander looked directly at him through the screen. Her expression did not change. "Admiral, let me make our position clear. We reject your demand. We reject your presence in our space. And we reject any claim you might have to our world." "You would choose death over service?" Kethver asked. This was unusual. Most primitives begged for mercy at this point. "We choose to fight," Chun replied. "And Admiral? You just declared war on humanity. I hope you brought enough ships." The connection ended. Kethver stared at the blank screen for a moment. His bridge crew looked equally surprised. No primitive species had ever responded to their demands with such direct defiance. "Sir," his tactical officer said, "their fleet is moving to intercept us. 67 ships total, all primitive chemical propulsion." 67 ships? Kethver looked at his own force. 12 heavy cruisers, each one capable of destroying 100 primitive vessels. They planned to fight us with 67 primitive ships? "It appears so, sir." Kethver walked to the tactical display and studied the approaching human fleet. Their ships were crude metal constructs with simple weapon systems. His sensors showed they carried chemical, explosives and basic energy weapons that could not possibly harm his advanced vessels. "Perhaps they do not understand what they face," suggested his intelligence officer. "Then we will teach them," Kethver replied. "All ships, prepare for engagement." Target their military vessels first. Once we destroy their fleet, they will see reason. The battle began exactly as Kethfer expected. His ship's energy beams tore through human vessels like they were made of paper. The primitive ships exploded in bright flashes as their crude armor failed instantly against superior technology. But something was wrong. The humans were not retreating. Even as their ships died around them, the remaining vessels pressed their attack. They fired everything they had at his fleet, even though their weapons bounced harmlessly off Zephian shields. Their tactics make no sense, his tactical officer reported. They continue attacking despite taking massive losses. Kethfer watched as a human ship, its hull already burning from multiple hits, accelerated directly toward one of his cruisers. The primitive vessel crashed into the Zephyrian ship's shield and exploded, causing no damage but creating a brilliant flash of light. Why would they waste their lives like that? He wondered aloud. More human ships followed the same pattern. Instead of retreating when faced with certain death, they seemed to become more aggressive. Their formations tightened and their attacks became more focused, as if they were learning from each failed assault. By the end of the battle, all 67 human ships had been destroyed. Kethfer should have felt satisfied with the complete victory, but instead he felt confused. No species had ever fought with such determination while facing impossible odds. Admiral, his communications officer, called out, "We are receiving another transmission from the planet." The same human commander appeared on screen. She looked tired, but her voice remained steady. "Admiral Kethfer, you have destroyed our space fleet. Now you face our real defense." "Your real defense?" Kethfer could not hide his surprise. "What defense could you possibly have left?" Chun's expression grew cold. "You are about to find out what happens when you attack a species that has been at war with itself for 10,000 years. Every human on this planet has been preparing for this fight their entire lives, even if they did not know it. We have been killing each other with increasing efficiency for millennia. Now we finally have a common enemy." The screen went dark again. Kethfer stood in silence for a long moment. Around him, his crew began preparing for the invasion of the planet below. Standard procedure called for orbital bombardment of major cities, followed by ground forces to secure important resources. But something about the human commander's words bothered him. How could a species be at war with itself for 10,000 years and still survive? Most species that warred internally destroyed themselves within a few centuries. He pushed the thought aside. No matter what these humans thought they could do, they were still primitives facing the most advanced military force in the galaxy. The invasion would proceed as planned. The great ships of the Zephyrian hegemony moved into position around Earth, preparing to add another primitive world to their empire. Admiral Kethfer had no way of knowing that he had just made the worst mistake in galactic history. The bombardment of Earth began at dawn, Earth Standard Time. Admiral Kethfer watched from his flagship as bright beams of energy struck military bases, government buildings, and major cities around the planet. The attacks were precise and calculated to break human resistance quickly. Within 6 hours, most of Earth's major military installations had been reduced to smoking craters. Satellite networks went dark. Communication systems failed. The planet's primitive defense grid was completely destroyed. Kethfer expected the surrender signals to begin within hours. Every species they had conquered followed the same pattern: shock at the overwhelming attack, desperate attempts to negotiate, then complete surrender when they realized resistance was impossible. But no surrender came. Instead, something else happened. As the orbital bombardment continued, the humans began to adapt. Their military forces, instead of concentrating in large bases that made easy targets, broke apart into small groups that scattered across the planet. They moved into cities, forests, mountains, and underground tunnels, becoming impossible to target from orbit. "Sir," His tactical officer reported. "We are detecting unusual activity in the bombed areas." "What kind of activity?" "The humans appear to be salvaging our weapon impacts. They are collecting fragments from our energy beams and studying them." Keffer frowned. "How can they study energy beam fragments?" "Unknown, sir. But our sensors show them taking the melted metal and crystallized material from impact sites and moving it to hidden locations." This was not normal behavior. Most species cowered during orbital bombardment. They did not collect samples and retreat to analyze them. After 3 days of bombardment, Keffer ordered the ground invasion to begin. Transport ships carrying 10,000 Zephyrian soldiers descended toward the planet's surface. The landing zones had been carefully chosen. Open areas near major population centers, where resistance would be minimal. The first transport ship landed in what had been a large city on the continent the humans called North America. The landing zone was a flat area that sensors showed was empty of human activity. The ship exploded the moment it touched the ground. "What happened?" Keffer demanded. "The landing zone was mined, sir. Buried explosives, very sophisticated design." "Impossible. Our sensors showed no explosives. The humans appeared to have used a material that does not register on our detection equipment." More transport ships landed in other zones around the planet. 4 more exploded instantly. The others found themselves under immediate attack from weapons that should not have existed. Human soldiers fired energy beams that looked remarkably similar to Zephyrian weapons. Their improvised vehicles moved with speed that matched hegemony technology. Most disturbing of all, their tactics showed a level of coordination and planning that suggested they had been preparing for this exact scenario for years. "How are they using our weapons?" Keffer asked his intelligence officer. "We believe they reverse-engineered them from the bombardment fragments, sir. In less than 3 days, they appeared to have developed working copies of our energy weapons." "That is impossible. It took our species 200 years to develop that technology. Nevertheless, sir, that appears to be what they have done." The ground war quickly became a nightmare for Zephyrian forces. The humans fought unlike any enemy the hegemony had ever faced. They did not form traditional battle lines or attempt to hold territory in conventional ways. Instead, they appeared everywhere and nowhere. A Zephyrian patrol would secure a city block, only to find themselves under attack from the buildings they had just cleared. Humans emerged from sewers, from hidden rooms, from tunnels that had not existed hours before. They attacked, caused casualties, and disappeared before reinforcements could arrive. Worse, the humans seemed to learn from every encounter. Tactics that worked once against them never worked again. They adapted their defenses faster than Zephyrian forces could adapt their attacks. Colonel Vextar, leading ground forces in the ruins of a human city called London, reported back to the flagship after a week of fighting. "Admiral, we control perhaps 10% of this city, and that control is questionable. The humans have turned every building into a fortress, every street into a trap. They fight from positions we cannot see, using weapons we cannot predict." "How many casualties?" Keffer asked, though he dreaded the answer. 40%, sir, and rising daily. 40% casualties in 1 week fighting a primitive species. It was unthinkable, but the reports got worse. The humans had begun to use psychological warfare in ways that even experienced Zephyrian soldiers found disturbing. They left recordings that played sounds of dying Zephyrians in empty buildings. They created false communications that led entire platoons into ambushes. They somehow knew individual Zephyrian names and broadcast personal threats to specific soldiers. Most unnervingly, they had begun to take prisoners. But these prisoners were not treated badly. Instead, they were questioned extensively about Zephyrian technology, tactics, and homeworlds. Several prisoners have been released carrying messages that described human capabilities in detail, clearly intended to demoralize other Zephyrian forces. Sir, his communications officer reported, we are receiving a transmission from the planet. Commander Chun appeared on screen again. She looked different than before. Her uniform was torn and dirty, and there was a bandage over her left eye. But her voice remained calm and confident. Admiral Kethver, how are you enjoying your visit to Earth? Your resistance is pointless, Kethver replied, trying to sound more confident than he felt. We have superior technology and unlimited reinforcements. Do you? Chun asked. Because from where I stand, it looks like you are losing soldiers faster than we are. And Admiral, we have not even begun to fight back yet. What do you mean? So far, you have been fighting our defensive forces. Local militaries, police, civilian volunteers. You have not yet met our real army. Kethver felt a chill. Your real army? Every human is a soldier, Admiral. Every human has been training for war their entire lives, whether they knew it or not. We have been fighting each other for so long that fighting someone else is almost easy. Chun paused, and when she spoke again, her voice carried a cold promise. You came here expecting to fight primitives. Instead, you are fighting a species that has weaponized everything we touch. We have turned our cities into weapons, our children into soldiers, and our deaths into propaganda. You are not fighting an army, Admiral. You are fighting an entire species that has been shaped by 10,000 years of warfare. The transmission ended. Kethver stood on his bridge, surrounded by reports of mounting casualties and tactical failures. For the first time in his military career, he began to consider the possibility that the Zephyrian hegemony might not win this fight. Below him, on the planet's surface, the humans continued their resistance. They fought with weapons they had built from salvaged alien technology, using tactics developed over millennia of conflict, and with a determination that seemed to grow stronger with each passing day. The most advanced military force in the galaxy was being defeated by primitives, who refused to accept defeat. 3 months into what should have been a simple conquest, Admiral Kethver received the message he had been dreading. High Command was sending reinforcements. The fact that he needed them was already a humiliation that would follow him for the rest of his career. The fact that he desperately needed them was something he could never admit out loud. The reinforcements arrived in the form of an entire battle fleet, 50 heavy cruisers, 200 smaller warships, and 100,000 ground troops. Admiral Lexon, Kethver's former teacher at the military academy, commanded the relief force. Kethver, the old admiral said when they met in person aboard the flagship, explain to me how a single primitive planet has held off the might of the hegemony for 3 months. Kethver had prepared for this conversation, but he still struggled to find the right words. The humans are different, sir. They do not fight like other primitive species. Different how? They adapt, sir. Faster than should be possible. They take our technology and improve it within days. They use tactics we have never encountered. And they do not surrender, no matter how hopeless their situation becomes. Admiral Lexan studied the tactical reports on his personal display. His expression grew darker with each page. 40% casualties among ground forces. 37 ships damaged or destroyed. Complete failure to secure any strategic objectives. He looked up at Kethver with angry eyes. This is not just different. This is a disaster. Yes, sir. Show me. They watched live feeds from the ground war together. Human resistance fighters moved through the ruins of their own cities like ghosts, appearing long enough to destroy a Zephyrian position before vanishing into tunnels, buildings, or underground networks that seemed to have been built specifically for this kind of warfare. How are they coordinating these attacks? Dexan asked. We destroyed their communication systems. They rebuilt them, sir, using our own technology. But their new systems are completely unlike ours. Our intelligence teams cannot break their codes. On the screen, a group of human fighters attacked a Zephyrian supply convoy using what looked like modified hegemony weapons. But the weapons had been changed in ways that made them more effective against Sephorian armor. They modified our weapons to be more lethal to us? Dexan asked. Yes, sir. They seem to understand our technology better than we do. But the situation on the ground was only part of the problem. Reports were coming in from across the hegemony that made Kethver's failure seem like a small concern in comparison. Other conquered species had begun to rebel. The Meraki, aquatic beings who had been peaceful subjects of the hegemony for over 2 centuries, had suddenly begun attacking Zephyrian facilities on their home world. Their attacks used tactics that were clearly inspired by human resistance methods. The Vorthok, a crystalline species that had served as miners and engineers, had begun sabotaging hegemony equipment using techniques that matched human demolition methods exactly. Most disturbing of all, these rebellions were coordinated. Different species on different worlds were using identical tactics and similar technology improvements. Someone was teaching them how to fight back effectively. The humans are broadcasting, Dexan said, reading the latest intelligence reports. Their signals are reaching every world in the hegemony. What are they broadcasting? Technical information, tactical manuals, weapons designs, and something else. Dexan paused, his face grim. Hope. The human broadcasts were unlike anything the hegemony had encountered before. Instead of propaganda or threats, they were educational programs that taught other species how to resist effectively. The humans shared every trick they had learned, every weakness they had discovered in Zephyrian forces, every technological advancement they had made. But more than that, they were sharing their attitude. The broadcasts showed humans fighting impossible odds and winning through determination and clever thinking. They demonstrated that advanced technology could be overcome by creativity and ruthless persistence. Other species were learning that the Zephyrian hegemony was not invincible. And once they learned that lesson, many of them decided to act on it. Sir, the communications officer interrupted their discussion. We are receiving a priority message from the homeworld. The message was from the High Council itself. 17 star systems were now in open rebellion. Zephyrian forces were being attacked on dozens of worlds simultaneously. The empire that had taken 5 centuries to build was beginning to collapse. The humans did this, Dexan said quietly. One primitive species has started a galaxy-wide rebellion. What are our orders? Kethver asked. And this. Quickly. Use any means necessary. Kethver knew what that meant. The hegemony had weapons that could destroy entire planets if required. They had never needed to use them before, but the situation was becoming desperate enough to consider extreme measures. But before he could issue those orders, another report came in that changed everything. Admiral, his intelligence officer said, his voice shaking slightly, "We have detected human ships approaching the outer system." Impossible. We destroyed their entire space fleet months ago. These are not the same ships, sir. These appear to be newly constructed vessels using a combination of human and alien technology. The main screen showed the approaching fleet. 23 ships that looked like nothing the Zephyrians had ever seen before. They combined human design principles with technology that was clearly borrowed from multiple alien species. Where did they get alien technology? Dexan demanded. From the rebellion, sir. The other species are sharing their knowledge with the humans, just as the humans shared their resistance techniques. How many ships? Kethver asked. 23 confirmed, sir. But there are more arriving every hour. As they watched, more ships appeared on the edge of the system. Ships built by humans but incorporating Meraki stealth technology. Ships using Vorthic crystal power systems. Ships armed with weapons that combine the best features of a dozen different alien technologies. The humans had done something unprecedented in galactic history. They had turned a war of conquest into a war of liberation. They had transformed themselves from victims into leaders of a galaxy-wide resistance movement. And now the resistance was coming to fight. Commander Chun is requesting to speak with you. Admiral, the communications officer reported. Chun appeared on screen for the third time, but she looked completely different now. Instead of a desperate defender, she looked like a confident military leader. Behind her, the bridge of her ship showed a mixture of human and alien crew members working together. Admiral Kethvar, she said, I told you that you had declared war on the most dangerous species the galaxy ever knew. You did not believe me. What do you want? Kethvar asked. The same thing I wanted 3 months ago. For you to leave our space and never come back. The difference is that now I have the power to make you leave. You have 23 ships. We have over 200. Chun smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. Admiral, you still do not understand what you are fighting. We are not just defending Earth anymore. We are liberating the galaxy. And we have learned everything we need to know about fighting you. The human fleet moved into attack position. Their ships were smaller than Zephyrian vessels, but they moved with a coordination and purpose that was deeply unsettling. For the first time since the war began, Admiral Kethvar wondered if the hegemony was about to lose. The battle that followed was unlike anything in recorded galactic history. The human fleet moved with a precision that seemed impossible for ships built by different species using incompatible technologies. But somehow, they fought as one coordinated force. Admiral Dexan commanded the Zephyrian fleet with decades of experience. But his traditional tactics proved useless against an enemy that refused to follow traditional patterns. The humans attacked from multiple directions simultaneously, used weapons in combinations that should not have worked, and employed strategies that seemed designed specifically to counter Zephyrian advantages. Their shield frequencies are rotating every few seconds, the tactical officer reported. Our weapons cannot lock onto a stable target. Then increase our rate of fire, Dexan ordered. But even as Zephyrian ships poured energy into the human fleet, the smaller vessels continued their assault. They moved in patterns that made no sense according to standard military doctrine, yet somehow avoided most incoming fire while delivering devastating attacks on Zephyrian weak points. Sir, another officer called out. They are targeting our communication arrays specifically. What? Every human attack is focused on our ability to communicate between ships. They are trying to isolate us from each other. Within an hour, the Zephyrian fleet was effectively blind and deaf. Individual ships fought alone, unable to coordinate with the rest of the fleet. The humans had studied their enemy carefully and found the one weakness that could turn superior numbers into a disadvantage. But the space battle was only part of the problem. Reports continued to flood in from across the hegemony of coordinated rebellions breaking out on world after world. And every rebellion used identical tactics, identical technologies, and identical strategies. The Vorthic had somehow learned to create weapons from their crystal formations that could slice through Zephyrian armor like paper. The Meraki had developed underwater bases that were completely invisible to hegemony sensors. The rock-dwelling Kethmori had turned their mining tunnels into vast underground networks that allowed them to attack from anywhere at any time. Every species was fighting differently, but they were all fighting effectively, and they were all using methods that had clearly been taught by humans. How are the humans communicating with all these worlds? Admiral Kethvar wondered aloud as he read the latest reports. We believe they have developed a new form of faster-than-light communication, his intelligence officer replied. something based on quantum entanglement principles, but modified in ways our scientists do not understand. Modified how? They appear to have solved the information degradation problem that has limited quantum communication for centuries. Their signals maintain perfect clarity across unlimited distances. This was staggering news. Faster-than-light communication had been the dream of every advanced species for millennia. The hegemony's own communication systems were still limited by distance and interference. But somehow, a primitive species had achieved what the galaxy's greatest minds had declared impossible. The humans were not just sharing tactical information across the galaxy. They were sharing it instantly, in real time, with perfect accuracy. "Sir," the communications officer interrupted. "We are receiving a transmission from the Hegemony Council." The message was brief and terrifying. 43 star systems were now in rebellion. Hegemony forces were retreating from 12 worlds. 3 major industrial centers had been completely overrun by rebel forces. The economy of the Empire was beginning to collapse as supply lines were cut and resource production stopped. "The Council is ordering a full retreat from Earth," Kethver told Dexan after reading the message privately. "A retreat? From primitives? The situation has moved beyond Earth. If we do not end the rebellions quickly, the entire hegemony will fall within a year." But even as they discussed retreat, the situation on Earth continued to deteriorate. Human ground forces had begun launching counterattacks against Zephyrian positions. These were not the desperate defensive actions of the past months, but coordinated military operations using equipment and tactics that matched anything the hegemony could deploy. Human soldiers now wore armor that was superior to Zephyrian gear. They carried weapons that were more effective than hegemony arms. Their vehicles moved faster and hit harder than anything in the Imperial arsenal. "Where did they get all this equipment?" Dexan demanded. "They built it, sir, using techniques learned from the rebel species. The Vorthik provided crystal technology. The Meraki contributed stealth systems. The Kethmori shared their metallurgy knowledge. Every species that has joined the rebellion has added something to human capabilities. In 6 months, a primitive species has developed technology that surpasses our own?" "Yes, sir. But technology was only part of the problem. The humans had also developed something far more dangerous, a philosophy of resistance that was spreading across the galaxy like a plague. Before the human war, conquered species had accepted their fate. They worked within the hegemony system, contributed their labor and resources, and lived peaceful, if restricted lives, under imperial rule. Some grumbled about their situation, but none had seriously considered rebellion as a realistic option. The humans had changed that. They had proven that advanced technology could be overcome by determination, creativity, and coordinated resistance. They had shown that the hegemony could be hurt, could be defeated, could even be destroyed if enough species worked together. More importantly, they had shown other species how to work together effectively. The galaxy had never seen true cooperation between different alien races before. Species were too different, had too little in common, faced too many communication and cultural barriers. But the humans had somehow bridged those gaps. They had created a network of cooperation that spanned dozens of worlds and included hundreds of different species. They had built something that had never existed before, a truly galactic alliance based on mutual support rather than conquest. "Admiral," his tactical officer reported, "human forces are advancing on all fronts. Our ground troops are requesting immediate evacuation." "And the other rebellions?" Dexan asked. "Growing stronger every day. The humans are now sending military advisors to rebel worlds. They are teaching other species how to build the advanced weapons they have developed." This was the final disaster. The humans were not just defending themselves anymore. They were actively spreading their technology and tactics to every species that wanted to fight back against hegemony rule. Within a year, the hegemony would face dozens of species armed with weapons and knowledge that had been developed specifically to defeat imperial forces. The galaxy's most powerful empire would find itself fighting a war against enemies that were technologically equal and tactically superior. "Sir," the communications officer called out again. "Commander Chun is requesting to speak with you." Chun appeared on the screen, but this time she was not alone. Behind her stood representatives of at least 6 different species, all wearing similar uniforms and all looking directly at the camera with expressions of confidence and determination. "Admirals," Chun said, addressing both Zephyrian commanders, "I want to offer you one final chance to end this war peacefully. What are your terms?" Kepher asked. "Complete withdrawal of all hegemony forces from Earth and every rebelling world. Recognition of the independence of all species that choose to leave the Empire. And a formal agreement that the hegemony will never again attempt to conquer or subjugate any world without the free consent of its inhabitants. Impossible." Dexan replied immediately. "Then you choose to continue fighting," Chun said. "Admiral, let me explain what that choice means. You are no longer fighting one primitive species. You are fighting an alliance of 43 worlds with combined technological capabilities that exceed your own. You are fighting an enemy that knows everything about your weaknesses and has spent months developing weapons specifically designed to exploit them." She paused, and when she continued, her voice carried the weight of absolute certainty. "You cannot win this war. The only question is whether you will surrender now with your empire intact, or continue fighting until we tear it apart piece by piece." The transmission ended, leaving both admirals staring at a blank screen and contemplating the impossible reality that they were losing a war to primitives who had transformed themselves into the most dangerous military force the galaxy had ever seen. 2 years after first contact, Admiral Kethfer stood in the ruins of his career and watched the Zephyrian hegemony collapse. The reports arriving at his flagship told a story that would have been unthinkable when this war began. The galaxy's greatest empire was surrendering to primitives. 68 star systems had declared independence. The hegemony's core worlds were under direct attack by combined fleets of humans and their allies. The imperial economy had crashed completely as rebellious species stopped all resource shipments to Zephyrian space. The mighty war machine that had conquered half the galaxy was running out of fuel, ammunition, and hope. "Admiral," his communications officer reported, "the High Council is requesting immediate communication." The faces of the 5 remaining council members appeared on his screen. They looked like broken beings. The proud leaders of galactic civilization had been reduced to desperate survivors clinging to the fragments of their former power. "Kethfer," the lead counselor said, his voice barely above a whisper, "the situation is hopeless. We are authorizing you to negotiate a complete surrender." "Sir?" "You heard correctly. The humans and their allies have surrounded the home world. Our remaining fleets are no match for their combined forces. We must surrender before they decide to simply destroy us entirely." Kethfer had expected this moment for months, but it still felt surreal. The Zephyrian hegemony, which had dominated the galaxy for 5 centuries, was surrendering to a species they had discovered less than 3 years ago. "What are their terms?" "We do not know. They have refused to negotiate until we agree to unconditional surrender." "Admiral, you began this war. You will end it." The connection closed, leaving Kethfer alone with the weight of galactic history. He was about to become the admiral who surrendered the greatest empire in known space to a collection of primitives and rebels. But as he prepared to send the surrender message, his ship's sensors detected an approaching fleet. It was massive, Over 300 vessels representing dozens of different species, all flying in perfect formation toward Earth. At the center of the fleet was a ship unlike any other in the galaxy. It was clearly of human design, but it incorporated architectural elements from every major species in the rebellion. The vessel was both a warship and a symbol of the new galactic order that had emerged from this war. "Admiral," his tactical officer said quietly, "the lead ship is requesting permission to come aboard." Permission granted. 20 minutes later, Kefir found himself face to face with Commander Sarah Chun in his own conference room. She was accompanied by representatives of 8 different species, all of them wearing the same style of uniform that had become the symbol of the rebellion. Chun looked older than when he had first met her 2 years ago. Her hair showed traces of gray, and there were new scars on her face and hands. But her eyes held the same steady confidence they had shown during that first confrontation. "Admiral Kefir," she said, sitting down across from him at the conference table. "I understand you have something to discuss with me." "The Zephyrian hegemony surrenders unconditionally," Kefir said. The words felt strange in his mouth, but there was relief in finally speaking them. "I see." Chun studied his face carefully. "And what do you think that means?" "It means you have won. Your species and your allies control the galaxy now." Chun shook her head slowly. "Admiral, I do not think you understand what we have actually accomplished here. We did not fight this war to replace your empire with our own. We fought to end the idea of empire entirely." One of the alien representatives, a crystalline Vorthok, spoke in its harmonic voice. "No species should rule over another without consent. This is the principle for which we have fought." "What are your terms?" Kefir asked. "Simple," Chum replied. "The hegemony will be dissolved. All conquered species will be granted immediate independence. Zephyrian forces will withdraw to their original home systems and will never again attempt to conquer or subjugate other worlds. And the Zephyrian people? They will be free to govern themselves however they choose, as long as they do not interfere with the freedom of others." "Admiral, we are not conquerors. We are liberators." Kefir struggled to understand. "You are giving up the chance to rule the galaxy?" "We never wanted to rule the galaxy," Chun said. "We wanted to save it from being ruled by anyone." A Moraki representative added its liquid voice to the discussion. "The galaxy is large enough for all species to flourish independently. None should be master over all. But how will you maintain order? How will you prevent wars between species? How will you coordinate trade and communication?" Chun smiled for the first time since entering his ship. "Admiral, you are thinking like a conqueror. You assume that without imperial control, there will be chaos. But we have proven something different during this war. We have shown that species can work together voluntarily when they share common goals and mutual respect." She gestured to the other representatives around the table. "These beings come from worlds that had never cooperated before. Their species had no contact with each other until your empire brought them together as slaves. But working together to fight for freedom, they discovered they could accomplish far more than any of them could alone." "You are creating some kind of alliance?" "We are creating something that has never existed before," the Vorthok said. "A voluntary association of free species, bound together by choice rather than force." Chun nodded. "We call it the Galactic Federation. Every species that wants to join is welcome, as long as they agree to respect the freedom and independence of all other member species. No one rules over anyone else. And if I refuse these terms?" The room fell silent for a long moment. When Chun spoke again, her voice carried the cold certainty that had terrified Zephyrian forces for 2 years. "Admiral, your empire is already gone. Your fleets are destroyed. Your economy has collapsed. Your people are calling for peace. You can accept our terms and live freely on your own worlds, or you can continue fighting and face complete extinction. She leaned forward, her eyes locked on his. But let me be very clear about something. You called us primitives when this war began. You were right. We are primitives who never forgot that survival means fighting for everything that matters. We are primitives who turn every weapon pointed at us into something stronger pointed back at you. We are primitives who just taught the galaxy that predators can become prey. If you continue this war, Admiral, you will discover just how primitive we can be when we decide that someone needs to be completely destroyed. Kefir believed her. After 2 years of fighting humans and their allies, he had learned that these beings meant exactly what they said. They had already accomplished the impossible by defeating the hegemony. If they decided that the Zephyrian species needed to be eliminated entirely, they probably had the power to do it. I accept your terms, he said quietly. Good. Chun stood up, and the other representatives rose with her. Admiral, I want you to understand something. This war did not have to happen. If your people had approached us with friendship instead of demands, we would have been happy to trade with you, to share knowledge with you, to work with you as equals. We will remember that lesson. See that you do. The galaxy is beginning a new age, Admiral. An age where species can grow and explore and discover together without fear of conquest or subjugation. Your people can be part of that future if you choose to be. Chun turned to leave, then paused at the door. Oh, and Admiral? Welcome to the Galactic Federation. We hope you will consider joining us voluntarily someday. After they left, Kefir sat alone in his conference room, contemplating the incredible transformation that had occurred. 3 years ago, the Zephyrian hegemony had been the undisputed master of the galaxy. Now, it was a small, defeated nation hoping to earn acceptance from the very primitives they had once planned to enslave. The humans had not just won a war. They had fundamentally changed the nature of galactic civilization. They had proven that cooperation was stronger than conquest, that freedom was more powerful than force, and that the most dangerous species in the galaxy was the one that refused to accept that might made right thought in trying to conquer a single, primitive world. The hegemony had awakened something that transformed the entire galaxy. They had declared war on humanity, and humanity had responded by teaching the universe how to be free. Admiral Kefir began composing his final report to the High Council. Knowing that historians would study this war for thousands of years as the moment when the galaxy learned that the most dangerous species was not the one with the best weapons or the largest empire, but the one that never stopped fighting for what it believed was right.